Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Buddhist Biohacker podcast and live stream vlog on YouTube at Buddhist Biohacker, and also if you're listening later on the recording to iTunes and Spotify at Buddhist Biohacker. My name is Lisa Gunshore, and I am your host on this mystical journey that we call life, and I'm very excited to have so many great conversations this week and so many planned for the future. And I'm very honored to have with us our guest, Julie Hoyle. Julie, it's always a pleasure to have you. It has been a whirlwind of journeys with you, and I just am glad to have you back today to talk about a really special subject.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be back. Really excited, and we'll see where we go with this. So the theme this afternoon is Darshan Keeping Sacred Company. So those of you that aren't familiar with this word, Darshan actually is a Sanskrit term that means having the vision or the sight of a deity or a holy being. And I was trying to figure out before I came on to the live stream if there's a Western equivalent for the word darshan, and I really couldn't think of anything. So if anybody comes up with a word that is similar that we're all familiar with, please let me know, because I haven't found anything that is in any way remotely the same. So before we get started this afternoon, I'd like to give you a little test. So don't worry, it won't involve writing anything down or, having to stand on your head or anything. And you don't need to have to think too hard. But let's just kind of see if everybody's connected in this afternoon. So I'm going to ask, a very simple question, and that is, throughout your life, whenever anybody has shared something with you that could, on first blush, appear to be implausible or untrue, it might be some sort of fantastical story, that is like really amazing, and you hear it, is there something in you that recognizes that person, assuming the person is telling the truth, is there something in you that recognizes truth? And has that been true throughout your life? And the second question is, when someone tells you a story, and they maybe, have a very sort of plausible appearance, they may tell you something that sounds absolutely convincing, and they have a serious face, or they have, a lot of detail around the story, yet there's something in you that just doesn't buy it. And you get this feeling, this is a load of BS, or, whatever term you want to give to it. Has that been consistent, and has that been true throughout your life? Now, I would hazard a guess that every single person that is listening to the live stream or listening later, in the videos, everybody's had this direct experience. It, absolutely, throughout your life, you've had instances where somebody's told you something that's implausible and you just know it's true. And then other people have told you things that you just know isn't true. Or sometimes it's partly true and they've embellished quite a bit. But there's something in you that recognizes that which is true and that which is not true, or isn't completely true. So this afternoon, I want to speak to that part. Let's call it a part. It's not actually a part of you. It is the full truth of you. And that recognition of truth that has always been there and, is always with you, does not require you to, and you can check this for yourself, it doesn't require you to sit in meditation for 3 hours or to chant, great long texts in Sanskrit. It doesn't require you to be able to perform amazing asanas and do hatha yoga before you get answers. Hopefully you recognize in this very, very simple inquiry, self-inquiry, that there is something within you that recognizes truth and also recognizes untruth. And that recognition is unfailing. It is always there. It is always available for you to pay attention to it and to learn from it and to maybe follow what it's pointing to, or maybe, step away from what it might be pointing to. So with respect to the term darshan and having the sight of a holy being, having the auspicious sight of a holy being, that can also relate to a holy text. It could relate to watching a video of a modern day saint, someone who's current. It could relate to reading the Bible and reading a holy text that was written by one of the apostles, or, something that Jesus said himself. But there's something inside of us. And again, you can check this out for yourself, and I'm sure it's been true. When you have read a holy text, or when you have seen a saint or an enlightened master, there's often something that he or she says, or something that you read yourself, that has such a profound effect on you and has such a high resonance within you. There's no room for the mind to engage in any sort of questioning or doubting or anything. And, I have many examples throughout my life, and I've shared many examples through, many of these presentations I've given. I've been very blessed to have lucid dream darshans of saints, sages, and siddhas. And what has happened in the lucid dreams is the second I've seen them, there's been an instant recognition. Even if I don't know the name of the being, and I have to look that up later, there's an instant recognition that I am seeing a God realized being, or a saint, or, or whatever term you want to give to one who has merged with God. The same is true when you are reading a book. And the thing is that you must have had some kind of spiritual awakening or shift of consciousness, or an awakening to the truth of who you are. Otherwise, this live stream, or any of the live streams that Lisa's presenting, on her platform, would have no interest. You'd be off looking for other things to do. So the truth is, you have recognized the truth yourself in order for you to be here and to be listening. So with that premise and with that understanding, let me share a few other things that will also point to the truth of your own seeing and your own self-recognition. Many, many years ago, really before, I can't even remember whether it was before I had a radical awakening or shortly after, but it was around that time. I was given a book on yoga, and there were different stories of great beings and saints, and it was written very beautifully. And, I was just loving reading it. And time and time again, what would happen is I'd be holding the book like this, reading it, and something would move me so much, and it would be so powerful and so intense. The only thing I could do was put the book against my heart, close my eyes, and breathe it in, and let it kind of resonate and go inside and fill me. And what I realized many years later is the very act of doing this and closing my eyes and connecting in was, a clear indication that in being with this holy sacred text, what was happening was I came out of the mind. The heart was looking and reading the words, and recognizing what was being said. And the very act of recognition, the only thing that I could do was to go into silence and put the book against my chest and close my eyes. So another thing I would like you to do, I would invite you to do right now, and again, you don't have to write anything down, is to think about all the times in your life where you've had a similar experience of bringing something into your heart, you know, feeling like you want to close your eyes, taking in the truth, you know, and there's no question that it's not the truth. You can recognize it in every cell of your body, and you're bringing it in and you're honoring it and you're kind of bowing to it and you're recognizing it. Because my guess again is that this has happened to you many, many, many times. This recognition has shaped the direction of your spiritual life, if not, you know, every other aspect of your life. It has informed you of the truth of who you are. And it has shown you many times that what you're reading or what you're seeing in the form of an enlightened master or a guru or a teacher is at the very expression of what you already know to be true. It's not like they are taking something and pouring new information, you know, into your mind or into your heart. Recognition in and of itself is you seeing, hearing, and feeling something that you have always known, you have always recognized. You may not have been able to put it into those words, but it's an absolute recognition that is undeniable. And the proof of that too is that there is an energy in it that fills you, and it changes you, and it expands your awareness of who you are. It expands your consciousness. It makes you feel lighter and brighter, and it really puts you into a, you know, a direct connection with the truth of who you are that is absolutely undeniable. And what happens, you know, along or on a spiritual journey, and again, I'm sure many people that are listening in can validate this for themselves. This isn't me just saying something that, you know, you haven't heard before. But what I would say to you is, I'll bet, especially if you've been on a spiritual journey for many years, what you've been finding is that there's been a consistency with some of the teachings, whether it's from a Sufi master or a yogi master or a Christian saint or a, you know, a great being from a, you know, Native American tradition, for example. The truths, those truths that you keep reading and connecting in with are consistent. You keep hearing the same things. You keep reading the same things, to the point sometimes where you say, you know, I've read this so many times before. It keeps showing up again and again. It might be dressed slightly differently, but it's showing up as the same thing. So, you know, what I would love you to take away this afternoon, if you take nothing else away, is that the supreme self, or absolute awareness itself, or God, or consciousness, or whatever word or term you give to truth or absolute awareness itself, is here. It is right here in you. It is looking through your eyes. It is seeing right from where you are. And it does not take, there's no distance. It doesn't take effort for you to get to that place, because it is always here. It's always present. It's always available. And it is always able to, you know, speak to and tell you and indicate whether what you're reading or seeing is truth or whether it's something else. Now, it might feel that, you know, you're kind of tuned in and you're there and, you know, you're in absolute awareness itself and it's, you know, it's spot on and you feel amazing, you know, 1 minute. And then you might feel like it's lost or it's diminished or it's gone off or it's disappeared some, you know, for some time. And you have to meditate or do hatha yoga to get back, to try and get back there. Here's the truth. The truth is, it never moves from this place. It is always here. What moves is your attention. Your attention goes off someplace else. It goes into the mind. It comes up with these different ideas, or, you know, starts planning, or, you know, looking for something else, another distraction to do, to get involved with. And so you feel like, sometimes it feels like it's a million miles away. And actually, all it takes is to bring attention back to this place here, to what is here, to step out of the mind, because, you know, mind and time, as I said the other day, they're like twins. They go hand in hand. Step out of the mind and recognize that what is here is absolute awareness itself. It is realization itself. And only the self can recognize the self. Or another way of putting it is, the mind, so, you know, if, and you know this, again, it's true yourself, right? If you meet someone new, for example, and you're thinking about, oh my God, you know, what shall I have for dinner? There's not much, I need to go get some groceries, you know, just as an example. And you're not hearing anything that person says. That person introduces themselves, they say, hi, my name's Joe Lewis or whatever. And you're like, and you're not hearing anything anybody's saying, or this person is saying. You don't even hear their name. You haven't taken a word in. You've essentially, you know, put these kind of blinkers on or blinds down, and you're not available. And that's what happens with respect to being in the self, or being awareness itself, or being the self itself. And that's true for everybody. You know, and I'm absolutely certain those of you that are listening in can all relate to everything I've said. It's not like I'm telling you anything new. I'm telling you what you already know to be true. The truth is here. It's available right now. It doesn't require you to do 10 years of, you know, in-depth yogic study, or, you know, studying sacred texts, or doing, you know, those things are really valuable and they're very helpful. You know, yoga is amazing, meditation is fantastic, you know, but all these things are just tools and practices to help you and to facilitate you stepping out of the mind and being in the self, being here, being awareness itself, and to living from that place. But, you know, what happens, especially in the West, is we become, you know, habituated to thinking that we need, you know, we need our minds. You need to be in your mind. You need to be of your right mind. You need to use your mind. You know, and I'm not saying, you know, we're out to kind of destroy, or, you know, block off the mind, or, you know, turn it down or something. It's really about understanding the function of the mind and learning that the mind has its place. Obviously, if you want to, you know, book an airline ticket or write about a grocery list or something, you know, it has its place and it has its functions and it's useful. But you know, the real journey, if you like, the real spiritual journey is understanding that the mind it can be an ally and it can be very helpful. But at a certain point, you have to understand that the wisdom inherent in the absolute awareness, or in the self, is far more attuned, it's far more potent, it's far more helpful, and is more of service than what the mind can conjure up. And again, I know that you know this is true because you've had your own examples where you've been struggling with a question, you know, and you sleepless nights, and you've written your lists of what's right and what's wrong with, you know, and what to do and what to do and what to do, and you make yourself crazy. And then at the point when you think you really are going to go crazy if you don't get the answer, you just drop it. And then somehow the answer shows up. It comes out of silence. It comes out of absolute awareness itself.
This made me think of a story and a question, because you're talking about the tools that are available to us and yoga and meditation. And on this topic of darshan, there's also the tools of gurus that are accessible on YouTube and their own websites and things like that. And the story that came in my head while you were talking was when I took my refuge vows to become a Buddhist. I was in New York City at Radio City Music Hall, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama was doing this teaching for all of us there, so thousands of us there. And we came back from a lunch break, and we all came and sat in our seats, and His Holiness comes out onto the stage, and he said, I had this idea at lunch. You know, I had this idea that I just, you know, whoever wants to become a Buddhist and take your refuge vows, I'll just do it for you right now. So this is my plan. Yeah, it was really amazing. And there's an even longer amazing story to it for me personally. But what happened was, for me, I knew he was talking, you know, I was one of the people he was talking to, right? And I knew it was time to step up, and I stood up and I took my vows. And right after that, when we were done reciting them, he said, how about you want to take your bodhisattva vows? Let's do that too. And he said it just like that. It was very like simple. And about half of us stayed standing and took those vows. And the reason that story came to mind is because in this topic, I was thinking about how much it felt like this guru was speaking directly to me, and yet speaking to thousands of people that were there. And I think that's so accessible to us through YouTube and things. And I just thought that'd be something for you to kind of talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, that is a fantastic example. And let me just speak to that as well. When you were saying you felt like His Holiness was speaking directly to you, it was because he was speaking from the same place that you were resting in. You were in the self. So in a way, there's no distance between, and that's why it feels like, oh my God, he's speaking to me, because you and he are in the same place. And that actually is a perfect kind of segue into sharing what, you know, I was going to share next, which is, you know, as you said, there's this amazing propensity right now of you know, these gifts of enlightened masters and teachers that are available on YouTube. We don't have to travel to the Himalayas to meet them anymore. We can just go and find them online. Whereas, you know, when I first started out, there was nothing. So anyway, I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was about 4 years ago, probably. And at the time I was on vacation, so I had some free time, and I had this message to go onto Facebook and to just kind of check Facebook for whatever reason. And when I went onto Facebook, I saw that there was an enlightened, well, he's considered an enlightened master that was going to be in Rishikesh. And I don't need to speak about who this person was, because it's the same truth that comes through all, right? Assuming that they're authentic. So I just thought, oh, let me check that out. So I went on and had a look. And then, so I saw this teacher, this guru, sitting on this stage in front of I think there must have been maybe 600 or 700 people, maybe. I mean, there were a lot of people. And he was sitting silently, just looking around the audience and taking everyone in. And I saw from where I was seeing, the place I was seeing, I saw that he was looking at every person in that room as the supreme self. He wasn't sitting there thinking, oh, she's only 50% the self, you know, what's she doing here? Or he's only 20%, he's wasting his time, he should go home. The place he was seeing from was seeing the supreme self or supreme consciousness or God or whatever you want to, whatever term you want to use, absolute awareness. That is what he was seeing, and that is what he was speaking to. Then what happened was, he said a few words, and then he invited people to come up and ask questions. So someone would come up and they would ask a question. And what happened again and again and again and again is that I would hear, the question would be asked and he would just kind of close his eyes for a minute or he'd look up. And I would hear word for word the exact answer that he would then give. And it was like I heard it a split second, and it felt like I was hearing it at the same time he was hearing it. And then he would speak it. And that happened again and again and again and again and again consistently. Then what happened was he started to give these like stories. You know, yogis often tell stories as a way of inviting seekers to participate and to have a direct experience of seeing. So he started to share these beautiful stories. And what happened was, not only I knew what was coming, what he was going to say, but I could also feel the energy, the vitality of truth in what he was saying. I knew it was absolute truth. So in that space of watching this being, you know, doing his thing and giving his presentation, I had the direct experience of seeing what he was seeing, hearing inside myself what he was also hearing and speaking out, and then feeling what he was feeling. And then towards the end, someone came up and asked a question, and she said something about having studied the teachings of Jesus and being very moved by Jesus and trying to put her experience that she was having, you know, in that setting with him into context with Jesus. And he gave a very beautiful answer. And I don't remember the first part of the answer, but the second part of the answer was profound, because he said, recognition of the self is the self. Honor that recognition. Recognition of the self is the self. Honor that recognition. So in other words, that in you which recognizes truth in his holiness, in Jesus, in any saint or sage or siddha, that place in you that recognizes the truth is God, or is the truth itself. In other words, you are already that which you are recognizing or seeing in the form of a sacred text or in the form of a great being. And there is no distance between that which sees and the seeing itself and the outer form of truth. And that is here. That has always been here. And that recognition and that feeling that you have when you recognize truth in a great being, or you recognize truth in a text, or you connect in with something that moves you and shows you this is truth, that that which is within you and has always been within you is source or God itself. You don't have to stand on your head, or do practices for 20 years. It has always been here. And the whole point actually of the practices and doing all of those things is to help us drop and let go of everything that tells us differently and tells us we're separate and tells us we have to purify ourselves and tells us, we've got to work really hard to realize the self or realize absolute awareness. And the truth is that, spiritual awakening is a destructive process. It's not about building up the self and getting more knowledge and becoming great at hatha yoga. And actually, if it was a case of having to be great at hatha yoga, I'd be a hopeless case because
I'm glad you bring that up because I'm, yeah. I mean, I'm a yogi who barely can touch my toes. It's
me too. It's
difficult for me.
Yes. I mean, I'm one of those, and I'm throwing this in because it's so hilarious, actually, because I've always loved yoga, always, since I was 14, But, try, when you sit down, you sit on the floor and you sit with your legs wide apart and straight, and then you try and sort of bend and put your head down. I'm like, give me a strap.
Oh, me too. That makes me feel better to know because I'm the same way. I'm like, you make progress and it feels good, but there's this part of you that's like, I'm never gonna do lotus position. Like, that is not real for me, and my hips may never ever do that. And so I love you bringing that up, especially going into our summit this weekend, because I don't want anyone to be afraid and not
Indeed.
access these classes because they're like, well, I've never done yoga. And, that's not the point.
Yeah. I mean, it's the truth, though, right? We have these bodies, and some bodies are very flexible, and some just aren't.
Yes.
And you can try and, I've had so many yoga teachers trying to push me. And it's like, I've got news for you, honey. This isn't going to work.
Oh my God. That makes me think of the Iyengar. There's a new documentary, or fairly new, in the last couple of years about Iyengar, and he's near and dear to my heart as a teacher. But I just see that image in the documentary, and he's like 91 years old, and he's doing, he's touching his toes with this gigantic weight on his back, like pushing him to the earth. And I'm like, oh my God, that's just not going to happen for me.
No. And look, here's the thing. We set ourselves up, especially when we're kind of naive and we're just starting. We think we have to be vegetarian. We have to be amazing at yoga. We have to be able to sit in lotus and meditate for 3 hours. Whatever the stories are that kind of like start building up. And it's rubbish.
Yes.
Because all of these things, they're just practices and they're fantastic and they're wonderful and we love them. They're great. Meditation's great. Contemplation's, all of those things are wonderful. But the whole point of the practice is that you undertake that. And there's also, it's useful because of the discipline, because you start to become disciplined. And then by extension, you start to discipline your mind and start noticing what your mind's doing, and all those are fantastic things to undertake. At the same time, there has to be a recognition that these are just practices and they're really just there to help you recognize that you are not the mind, you're not the body. And that to connect, if you like, or recognize self with a capital S, it requires you to let go of all the ideas and beliefs and opinions you have about life or about, attaining the highest or becoming self-realized or whatever, enlightened or whatever. Really is about putting everything down stepping out of the mind and being with and recognizing what is here and what has always been here and is not subject to change and does not come and go and is consistent and is the one thing that will always be present and always be accessible and available to you. And it's that simple. It's really that simple.
So one of the things that I wrote down to talk about today was, and it's pretty joyful too, actually, when I think about the times I've done this, but inviting gurus into your home. And I have another, I probably have 100 Dalai Lama stories, but I have another Dalai Lama story, which is I put his photo up in my house, and this is back in 2011. And I did it during the day, went on with my day, went to bed. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm burst wide awake with this loud crash. And his photo had fallen off the wall, smacked a bunch of books. Everything was all over the floor. And it was this big, like, wake up. And that's only one of many, many stories. And so I want to talk about that, because inviting the teachers into our home,
yes,
it has some funny things that go along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's happened to me a few times with pictures falling down or moving. Strange things have happened. And I'm glad you brought that up, because this is really important. That when we have the recognition of a great being, like you really connected with His Holiness. I really had a beautiful experience with Father Bede Griffith, who was a Catholic mystic and monk who went to live in India, even though I didn't know about him before the dream. He just showed up in a dream. And then I did research afterwards. But, I made, and this happened a few times with him. I made a point of finding a photograph of him, putting it in a nice frame, and then having it on my puja or altar space. And I've certainly got a picture of Nityananda, and I've got, Jesus. Jesus is, it's difficult because obviously we've only got like artists' descriptions of what they think Jesus looks like. So it's hard for me to find an image that relates to what I have experienced in lucid dreams. However, I do the best I can. And so I've got photos of these great beings. I can't put them all on there because honestly, there's been so many. I'd have to have them on every wall and on the ceilings, I think. So I try, I really honor all of them, and I just choose, I've chosen some. So I've had them in our houses because we've moved quite a bit over the years, and I do have them as a sort of a touchstone and a place to bow to, and a place as a focus for meditation, and all of those things, and I even have beautiful Buddhist kind of a wooden little statue that I saw in the hardware store, I loved it. So I said, I have to buy it. And so I brought it home, and that's, part of my puja, which I really, really love. So having a sacred space is really important. At the same time, it's important. And one of my teachers told me this as well. He said, put a photograph of yourself in that setting on your puja, on your altar, as a part, as an important aspect, if you like, of honoring yourself and bowing to yourself as being one and the same as the great beings you're bowing to, because that's the truth. But oftentimes what happens is, we have an amazing experience with a saint or with a teaching or with a guru or like master or whatever, and it's very easy to put him or her on a pedestal and feel like, this great separation, he or she, can see and knows everything and is really connected with God. And here I am, I'm just like, I'm so far behind and I'll never get there. And you're consciously creating this separation. And the truth is that in you which recognized his holiness, or this great being that you're connecting with, is the same self, or the same source, or the same one as the one that you're bowing down to. And some people spend their whole lives serving and bowing to a guru or a teacher, and never really understanding or making that final connection, or that final leap, which really isn't a leap at all. It's just a recognition that the self is here, and it has always been here, and is what that is what recognizes the expression, if you like, of God in this form that you're so in love with, or that you're resonating with. So no, what you said is it's really valuable. It's really important, I think, to have some little altar or puja space that acts as a touchstone that keeps bringing you back.
What do our listeners do? And I know we've got lots of people tuning in on the live, so thank you guys for joining. But what do we do when an energy, whether it's a guru or a teacher or a guide or whatever you want to call it, starts showing up? How do you honor that? What do you do when it's like all of a sudden everywhere I look? And this is what happened to me. I mean, I can only talk about my experiences because they're mine.
Sure.
But, when I, meditated and His Holiness showed up in this meditation in 2009, and I was like, I don't even know what to do with that. And 3 days later, I get an envelope from the office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And it was a simple, we're looking for a donation, and it had these little Tibetan prayer flags that I still have, in these little paper ones. Obviously, there are these messages coming through like, pay attention, pay attention. I'd never gotten that kind of letter before. So when that happens, what do we do to honor that? What are we supposed to do with that information? Because I think we're recognizing it more and more and more. There's license. I saw a license plate the other day that had HHDL on it. I took a photo of it because I was like, oh my gosh. But what do we do with that?
Well, look, why don't you speak to what you did with that? Because I know you did something. You didn't just ignore it and say, oh, well, that was a cool dream. Oh, look, there's a letter from, right?
It's true. I mean, what I did with it was, well, I actually connected with you about what to do with it from what I remember. But I asked the universe, I asked Spirit, to show me more, and the letter showed up, and then I took action. So I actually went on his website, said, okay, what are you trying to show me? And found his schedule and got on a plane. I mean, it was exactly 7 days from that meditation to when I was on a plane to Berkeley in California to see him speak. And so that's what I did. And
sure.
Now when certain things pop up, and I think this too, and it's so beautiful. There's these beautiful butterflies that are right in front of me. So I'm going to use them as an example. I mean, the animal kingdom, and you might see a wolf out of the blue when you're not. I remember driving at like 2:00 in the morning from work one day, and this a fox of all things, ran across our interstate, which is like in Denver, Colorado. That's huge, and there's no animal, like a fox would never be there. And it was the middle of the night, and he ran across. And so I go look it up, I Google it, I search it, I look it up, I pull up the picture, I try to connect with it. I mean, that's what I do, is I listen. Like I make sure that I'm honoring that by listening to it and ask, what is it you're trying to show me? And so sometimes I figure it out, and sometimes I'm never sure, but I try to listen to that message.
Yes, I do the same, and I always have. I take everything that shows up. I don't just say seriously, because then it makes it's like stiff. So everything. To me, it's like it's a joy, and I take note. And then if it's an animal or a bird or something that shows up, then I'll do some research afterwards and see what it's showing me in terms of the message. Sometimes it's really obvious. But other times, you know, I might look up, you know, totems, you know, find out what that particular totem is saying. And certainly if it's you know, a great being who shows up in a dream, oftentimes the message is just so clear and so direct. I don't really have to question it too much. And then I'll act accordingly. And I will respond to what he or she has said to me, and I'll work with the energy of that as well. I don't just kind of let it fall away, because it's, you know, it's activated. It's the energy of enlightenment or awakening, or, you know, whatever you want to call it, and it's really potent. And the thing as well is I can pay testimony to that, because I can think about, you know, many of the lucid dreams I've had with great beings. And when I revisit them, they have the same potency and the same power and the same Shakti that they had when they happened, you know, 5 years or 10 years or 20 years ago. So you know, I really do take, you know, everything that I'm given as a real gift. And I really, the best way to honor it actually is to pay attention, to listen to what that dream or what that message is saying to you. If you read something or you see something online that really resonates with you, really pay attention, you know, write it down and really see what it is pointing to and telling you in your own life. And if you're being called to take action around, you know, what you're seeing and what you're feeling and what you're hearing inside yourself, because it's just for you. It's, you know, because a gazillion people might, for example, they might be on Facebook scrolling through, you know, not paying attention, and then there might be something on there that just yells out at you, and you know it's just for you, and it has meaning and it has purpose and it has vitality. And the thing is that, again, the place from which this is recognized within you is source or self itself, or absolute awareness itself. And it is, you know, getting your attention. It's kind of standing up and getting your attention,
Well,
so that you pay attention. No, so that you pay attention.
Yeah, so I think it's important. I like, you know, on the iPhone, you can put exclamation points on something. And I feel like I want to do that with what you said about the potency, because no matter how old the YouTube video is, or no matter where the picture comes from on the internet search, the energy is there. And I cannot even count how many times I've printed a picture of a Vajrayana deity or a guru, or even a teacher that's still living, you know, that's still operating, and their Shakti and their energy is so potent.
Yes.
And my husband is a great example, because he's a drummer and he's working on his music, and he actually has gone through and printed photos of the drummers he wants to connect with. And not only are they very esoteric from what you'd expect, I mean, some of them you'd expect, you know, like John Bonham from Led Zeppelin is on his wall. But what's happened is he's done this really in the last month, is all of a sudden other things are showing up that are giving him information. And so I just want to like accentuate for everyone, it really doesn't matter where it comes from, because it's going to carry that potency and that energy. And I hope everyone today thinks of someone they want to put on their wall, and you print a picture and you put them on your wall, or go look at it.
Yeah.
Go look at the picture. I remember looking at Nityananda in 2006 after we had connected, and I just pulled it up on my old desktop. God, it was so long ago. But I just remember looking at his photo. I wasn't able to print it off. I didn't have, but I just looked at the photo, and that was enough. And so I want to accentuate, like, it's all enough. It doesn't have to be, you know, you don't have to go buy a bunch of frames, and you can, but
you can. Right. You can just have them, for example, on your iPad, for example, you know, and look through images on your iPad. Yeah, it doesn't matter how you connect, but the point is that you are honoring those that you have resonance with, because they're showing up for a reason. And it's important. I think it's really important, because it's so easy to often to discount or to discredit or to forget, and to let these experiences we have, let them sort of fall away, and we put them behind us. But the reason is they're showing up is they're here to show you something, to get your attention and to awaken you to the truth of who you are. And that will keep happening, until you're ready to start seeing what is here. And oftentimes, when we're not paying attention, then, as we know also, we can have these, big events in our lives that maybe aren't so pleasant, through illness or, job loss, or through, whatever it is, whatever the story is, so that we start paying attention to what we're being called to. But it's really all about honoring that which is sacred and that which is continuously and repeatedly shown up in our lives. And another little thing that listeners can do is they can think about, all the times through life where there's been a connection to something sacred. And you just look back at your life at how many times that's happened. And of course, when I speak about that sort of recognition of the sacred, it might also be in the form of a mountain, in the form of a river, in the form of the sky or birds, or it doesn't necessarily have to be in a human form, in the form of a saint or a deity. It can be in a natural form, but there's something for all of us. We've all had these experiences, these direct experiences of seeing, where the mind isn't engaged, the heart is engaged, the heart recognizes the profundity, the magnificence of the light of the self, or the light of awareness, or the light of source, and it bows down to it in an instant. And that is consistent. That's everybody's story. At some point or another, there have been these moments, and those moments are truth.
Well, and I love what you're saying about it doesn't have to be it can be something natural. And I live in Colorado. I'm a native. I've been away and back a couple of times in my life. And I love the Rocky Mountains. They're my touchstone. And I remember this wonderful man, his name's Tenzin Pasang, because every Tibetan is named Tenzin. But Tenzin Pasang said to me that many Tibetans live, in Colorado, especially in the Boulder area, because it's very similar to their home. It reminds them of the Himalayas. And I remember him saying that, and the sacredness that I feel with the Rocky Mountains, it was almost like it came to me tenfold at that moment, that I understood there was this deeper meaning to me about why I'm here, why I'm drawn here, why I want that view every single day.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, oh, I get it. This is my home in deeper ways than I would have understood. So I think honoring that is huge.
Yes, it is huge. It is huge because being at home is what everybody's always looking for. Whether we recognize it or not, we're always looking to find a place that we can call home in a very deep way. Obviously, it's not just about your kind of physical environment, but it's about coming home to the self, being at home in source, recognizing that we are already there, actually, and the idea of separation isn't real, and it never has been real. And that, is huge. And that is the end of seeking, actually. The end of seeking, it just finishes. It's over with. And you know,
so easy.
well, it really is. You know, and I say that after close to 30 years of, you know, looking, seeking, you know, and being really ardent about the practices and doing meditation and chanting and, you know, doing all those things. And then, you know, getting to a point where, you know, in effect, what happened was I became almost disgusted, I suppose, there's no other word for it, with the search itself, or tired of the search itself, and realizing it was the searching, continuing to search, that was the biggest obstacle. And being identified with being a seeker was also an obstacle. And so, you know, and I don't know whether I spoke about this before, but, you know, I just dropped everything. And the only thing that had any draw of, it had any sort of resonance, was, and I stopped meditating and everything, but, you know, the only thing that really felt like there was a need to do this was to go into the silence inside my own being, and just to go in there as deeply as I could, even as I was going about my day and, you know, working and, you know, doing whatever, just deepening into that silence and just seeing how far does that, or how deep does that silence go? Is there an end to it? And just falling and falling and falling and falling and falling into that silence. And it was around that time, actually, that I had this prompt to go onto Facebook, and then I saw this teacher who was, you know, sitting, and he was looking, you know, everything I just shared about seeing, hearing, and feeling the truth, and the recognition of the truth, and that the self is already here, and it's a self that recognizes the self. It was that really brought an end to the whole kind of idea of being a seeker and seeking. And there was a recognition that, you know, even the seeking, the drive to seek, if you like, was the self. Was the self itself, you know, bringing me, or bringing the idea of being a person, letting that go, and then awakening to what was already here. So, you know, it all has value. Everything, even the seeking and doing all the practices and all those things that have great value. And then at a certain point, you know, everything's dropped. And we realize it has always been here. Absolute awareness itself is here now. I'm not separate from it. In fact, I am it. And the person is an expression of that. It's a fine expression of that. And, you know, it's part of it. But there is something prior to, and again, everybody can test this for themselves. It's not just me saying it. You know, prior to your story of yourself, prior to your titles, your belief, your stories, even if it's a story of awakening, or story of your practices or your insights or whatever, keep, you know, dropping all those things and see what remains, because there's something here that doesn't come and go.
I don't even have a response other than to say an hour with you goes by like that.
Like that.
It just does. You know, my biggest takeaway, and I hope, I'm sure that as listeners and viewers, you have many takeaways, but I hope all of you take away, you know, my biggest like start on my notes is to honor ourselves. And I've never done that. I've never put a photo of myself up. And I think to myself, like, I wonder how that will feel. So that's something I'm going to do from today's conversation, is I'm going to see how that feels and do that work. So
right.
thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you know, and it's not about, you know, vanity and like, you know, don't I look gorgeous? It's about, honoring absolute awareness itself as the expression of Lisa, or as the expression of Julie, or as the expression of Angela or Raquel, or whoever else is listening in today.
Yeah.
It's about that. It's about that. And that's what we connect in with when we connect in with these great beings. It's not like we're looking at their form and thinking, oh, doesn't she have gorgeous eyes? Or look at her hair, so pretty. Or, she's got a nice figure or whatever. It's the energy of that being that is undeniable, that we feel. And that is source or absolute awareness itself appearing in this form.
I love it. Thank you so much, Julie. I hope you guys can hear the birds. There's so many birds.
I could hear them all the way through. It's lovely. It's so nice. It makes me want to be outside.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. I'm sending the outside to everyone watching because it's just beautiful. I'm in my little yard, but the birds just won't stop chirping. It's just amazing. I love it. So
thank you. Yeah, it's been lovely. Really nice. I've enjoyed it. As always.
Gosh, thank you so much for being here, Julie, and for sharing your wisdom. And we have a big weekend kicking off here in just a few hours. So if you guys want to join in live at 6 p.m. today, our opening circle, and this is going to be, every single summit is beautiful, but this particular circle tonight is going to be really great for everybody to tune in to, because each facilitator is going to introduce themselves and share what they're teaching. So I think it gives you an opportunity to check in with what it is you feel drawn to do this weekend and who you want to connect with. And then some of us diehards are going to be doing it all day and all night for 2 days straight. But I'm really excited to kick off another OHO summit. So it's been deemed OHO. I don't know how this happened, but I like it. So
I do.
Yeah. Summit, right?
Yeah, it's great.
It is. So join us tonight at 6 Mountain Time. And thank you so much, Julie, for joining us again. And I hope everyone listening prints a picture of themselves and one of their teachers and gets them up somewhere safe in their home. And as usual, share your comments, whether it's on YouTube or on one of our social media posts or the podcast itself. Like, I'd love to hear, I know Julie would love to hear like what you're experiencing, what you're feeling, what's happening. And there's all sorts of fun stories to laugh about with the synchronicities that come from connecting with your teachers. So thank you.
And let me just say too, don't be shy about it, because there's often a tendency to think, to discount what you're feeling, or thinking we're more advanced or whatever you want. There's kinds of things that you tell yourself. Don't be shy.
Yeah,
because the more you open up, the more you share, the more your awareness expands.
Yes. And you don't know who you're helping or who you're opening up by sharing your experience.
Exactly.
Oh, so much love to you, Julie. I just
can't
say enough. And we'll be back again. And don't worry, you guys, I'm sure Julie will be back with us again very soon. And we'll see everybody tonight at 6 p.m. Mwah.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.